Shape of this country. Shape of this country, huh?
お前もだ。
待ってくれ。俺たちは
脅されて無理やり手伝わされた。これなら文句はあるまい。
Ah, nicely done.
こいつは。
俺らのマブダチ。
よし、手伝え。
You too, come.
バッカニア、8番ゲートだ。
Ah, Zoro.
押すんだ。よし、いけるぞ。方針右旋回。
A firm foot to the neck. That big booty. Ah. Okay. Oh, that looks beautiful. Look at this. Whoa. Okay, Buccaneer. Oh. Okay. Whoa. Yeah, that should do it. That's a great shot too. Oh, there you go, Fullman. Clutch. The cadence though. Oh, look at that. Team effort. That certainly felt like a boss fight.
極低温下でもお構いなしに効かしてその気化熱であっという間に体温を奪う。
Okay.
加えてこのブリザード脳みそまで即凍りつくぞ。
I'm sure news of this is going to get to Central somehow. What a bother. Whoa. Love that.
バッカニア、こいつらを連行しろ。
Yes, sir.
なんで俺たち協力してさせられた。その方が都合がいいのだろう。
That clicking noise? Oh, okay.
課長。
おはよう、兄さん。
ああ、そうだった。眠れた。
He looks like a Pokemon trainer or doctor character.
仲間を守ってくれたんだってね。
サンキャー。
あとマイルズ少佐は病院だ。
病院？
スカーとやり合って怪我した軍人の
Oh,
お見舞いだよ。
oh man.
スカーが来たに。
起きてるぞ。昨日はありがとな。
Hey, yes,
仲間が
yes.
命拾いしたよ。
Yep. They all saw it happen, right?
結束固いっつうか仲間思いだな。
You have to stick together up here in the north.
一枚岩よ。仲間を助けてくれたお前も仲間だ。
じゃあ
That's good.
その仲間を早くここから。
そいつはできない相談だ。
付近に潜伏している可能性があるな。
え
やれやれ。このタイミングで白黒猫に加えてスカーの捜索とは。スカーの件は我々に任せて養生してもら
Kimberly's really checking him out
待ち
there.
なさい。あなた方は引っ込んでいてください。イシュバール人は私の獲物です。
残念ながら殺人鬼をのさばらせておくほどブリッグズの兵はぬるくない。ここ
Here
の
it
掟
comes.
は弱肉強食。油断すればやられる。わかるか？舐めた口聞いていると二度と退院できなくなるぞ。
Kim Miles?
ブリッグズ支部が見ることになっている。おとなしくし
I
て
don't think Kimberly's about to behave himself, right?
イシュバール人はやはり面白い。
キンベリー。
Oh,
大丈夫かね？
yeah.
これはお早いお月で、レイブン中将。あなたが心配しているのはこれでしょう。
Look at that.
錬金術を使える医者を連れてきた。そして石がある。
Is that not the guy?
あっという間に全開だよ。
From the... It is! From the from the flashback. How old is he? I'm speaking of King Bradley's flashback as a younger man.
特にこの龍脈とやらがよくわから
The
ない。
Dragon Pulse.
大地の木のことですよ。 大地の木。
山の頂から噴出した後、地下へと入り
Whoa.
土地を潤していく力です。その力の流れや入り口出口を理解して使うと、これは万物に応用できる力なんですよ。
なるほど。これが遠隔連星の理屈か。地殻運動のエネルギーを使っている。
Look at this. This is
地震
educational.
や火山活動で地中に放出される莫大なエネルギー。それを使うのがこの国の錬金術だ。
Father's alchemy,
違うんで
perhaps.
すよ。この国に入ってから感じていた違和感。セントラルの地下ではっきりしたんですけど、なんだかたくさんの人がうごめいているような。
Yeah, she's right about that.
それからあいつらを連れてこい。
Yes, Slot's been at it for a long time.
すっげえ。本当にでかい
A
な。
long time.
これほどの仕込みに気づかず侵入を許すと。ただ20年近く前に真冬に山岳警備兵が襲われる事件があった。謎の女に1ヶ月食料や装備を奪われ続けたそうだ。
Oh, oh, is that?
真冬の
Ah.
山で1ヶ月生き延びたぞ。あれだ。
Oh, yes.
そろそろいいか。降りろ。
Okay. Far enough from ears.
さて、ここなら人目を気にすることはない。
There you go. Let's go.
貴様らが知っていることを全部話せ。今度こそ全てだ。察してくれと。それすなわち、私が察してくれると信じての言葉。切り捨てられてもおかしくないあの局面で、貴様はあえてその言葉を絞り出した。自分の命に変えても守らねばならんもの。例えば人質。
Oh, there you go. As expected of
偽りごまかしはいらん。
Olivier.
真実を話せ。賢者の石。ホムンクルス。キング・ブラッドレイ。お父様と呼ばれる男。軍上層部は真っ黒。
そしてやはり人質か。
幼馴染のオートメール技師にマスタングの部下。東方司令部とはよく合同訓練をしていたから
Ah, nice.
ホークアイやハボックは知っているぞ。失うには惜しい奴らだ。
Good.
マスタング大佐は
あ
Ah.
どうでもいい。いっそとっとと失脚してくれればライバルが減ってせいせいする。
このトンネルはおそらくドラクマから掘られたものじゃない。あくまで仮説だが、こいつはとてつもなく大きな
There you
円を
go.
描くように掘られている。
Okay.
円は力の循環を司る重要なファクターだ。あとは方程式。ファルマン少尉、国内であった流血を伴う
Oh, it's gonna add up. It's gonna add up.
流血
Is that going to be the third to
1558年7月リビエア事変。
リビエア
1661年10月カメロン内乱。
and all of it's
1799年2月ソープマン事件。
wow. It's happening over a long time, huh?
1811年3月
Whoa.
ウェルズリー事件。1911年5月から
I like this
ポトセットの
approach.
南で
It's not showing
南
us
部国
him
境
kind of drawing the lines
西の
yet.
ペンドルトンは
そして1914年ディオールの暴動。死者
All by design, of course.
暴動ってどうして？
リオールで偽教師の正体を
Oh yeah, I guess this is their first time, right?
すぐ
Finding
司令部
out.
に報告してよな。
中央軍だよ。奴らが出張ってきて東方軍をお払い箱にしたんだ。
And
これで各地をつなぐぞ。
that should give you
なんてことだ。第五研
で
究所の地下にあったという連星人とそっくりじゃないか。
こんな巨大なもので石を作ったら一体何人が犠牲になるんだ。
all.
この国を使って賢者の石を作ろうとしているのかとエンビーに聞いたことがある。
Oh, great
だが奴
transition.
が笑って言った。惜しい、いい線いってるとね。君なら真実の奥のさらなる真実を
And he
知るだ
has.
ろうと言った。真実とは賢者の石の材料が生きた人間であること。真実の奥とはそれを指導した者たちの存在。さらなる真実とは国土全部を使っての賢者の石の連星。だがそこで終わりではない。 最終的に奴らは何をしようとしているのか。私の知識と君の練炭術の知識とで何としてもこの研究所を読み取る。
Hell yeah, let's go. Ed, man.
一番古いのは1558年。
アメストリス建国後すぐだな。
ちょっと待て。
ちょっと待って。
これは全ての事件に軍が関係している。クーデター、内乱、リオールもそうだ。中央軍が出てきてことを大きくしている。
Wow, look at this.
建国の時からこの円を作り出すため。
That is ambitious.
この国を利用して何かをしようとしているのではなく、何かをするためにこの国を作り上げたのか。
我が国を。
ヒューズさんは？
ああ、殺される前に賢者の石の錬成陣を見ている。それに軍法会議所勤務だったから軍の事件を調べるのに事欠かない。
Yeah.
この国がおかしいってことにいち早く気づいて。
軍の犬、国家錬金術師。
Oh.
お前はこの国が何をしようとしている
Oh
のか
wow.
知っているのか。
Yes.
知れば私のやろうとしていることがわかるはずだ。
It's all adding up,
気に入
Red.
らんぞ。これを見る限り次に血を見るのは
North.
残っているのはこのブリッグズ周辺だけではないか。
Oh.
セントラルの奴ら、私の城で何をしようとしている。
レイブン中将に鎌かけてみてくれないか。
Okay.
お待たせして申し訳ありません。
いや、気にするな。
Kimberly's here too.
急に押しかけた私が悪い。
This should be interesting.
ああ、そうだ。客人を連れてきた。マイルズ少佐。彼に砦の中を見せてやってくれないか。
よろしく、マイルズ少佐。
敵の襲撃を受けまして、
襲撃？
なんとか撃退しましたが、これがまあいわゆる化け物というやつ。
化け物。
化け物というと？
殺しても死なないのです。たまたま鋼の錬金術師とその弟を保護したのです。化け物について何か知ってる風なのですが、何も喋らない。拷問してでも吐かせようかと思いましたが、私も女の端くれ、あんな子供をいたぶるなんて心が痛んでとてもとても。
いいね。心臓まで氷でできている女王様が。
私も本来なら子供の一人や二人はいてもおかしくない年なのですが、すっかり生き遅れてしまいまして。
何を言う。君なら引く手あまただろうに。
全く年は取りたくないものですね。
Oh, okay. Careful. Careful, careful.
不死身の体、夢のようではありませんか。
Careful.
なあ、少々。
How would you like?
完全な不死の軍団に興味はないか。
食らいついた。
Ah. Okay, that's good though. That's good. That's a good start for sure. Okay, yeah. See, that episode really felt like that it's starting to take its first steps towards this endgame story arc of the anime. You know, that it's been setting up for 35 episodes. I mean, in that sense, hell. You go back to Isaac McDougall, right? The freezing alchemist, Freezer. He knew all that time ago, ahead of his time. Much like Maze Hughes, the late great Maze Hughes, who did figure this out, right? He had it figured out. And yeah, you know, listen, of course, back at that point, it was really clear that Ed's not even in that, you know, headspace to be listening to Isaac McDougall, but he had it figured out. Though, of course, he was targeting King Bradley, so I'm not sure if he knew about this father figure, right? I think maybe he thought, King Bradley, the Fuhrer, King Bradley, is behind all of it, right? So perhaps he didn't know everything, but he knew a lot, right? He knew about the things the country's up to. And I remember from that episode that, you know, if you knew the things I know, you know, you would understand the things I'm trying to do here, right? So yeah, much like Maze Hughes, a man ahead of his time. Though of course, you know, Maze Hughes is certainly ahead of his time, you know, of course, established as quite the intelligent individual. But also in that sense, he was one of the only few, or the only one actually, in that hospital room scene, right? It had the two Ulrich brothers, it had Armstrong, and it had Maes Hughes. He was the only one that was essentially expendable, right? Because he's not an alchemist, right? So there's no potential sacrifice or candidate for a sacrifice. The other three are, right? Or at least two of them are guaranteed. But then in terms of Armstrong, he is an alchemist, so there is always that possibility. But Maes Hughes, no, right? It kind of goes back to a few episodes ago, episode 28, I think, titled Father. He tells, or Al was telling May that, listen, if they have no use for you, they take some really ruthless actions. Like, they're not afraid to take people out if they are roadblocks or speed bumps. So unfortunately, Maes Hughes falls into that category, doesn't he? Much like how Ling fell into that category. Though, of course, Ling, his personality, his drive, the fire within Ling kind of actually saved him in that sense, because, Father noticed and he's like, maybe I could use this one, right? Maybe I can use him as another pawn. But, go back to Maes Hughes. He was essentially marked for death anyways, right? Even before he actually figured it out. And, in that sense, you have to give a lot of credit to Forman. Jeez. I said he came clutch, but I feel like even that feels like an understatement here. He was so impressive. And I love that about this. Again, a supporting cast member or a character of this series. But here you see just how clutch he is, right? He's almost got this, knack, this complete understanding of the history of the country that he's been serving. I mean, he's just firing off incident after incident, no problems. He's got it, on lock. So you see some of the qualities, or the quality that perhaps made him one of the crucial components, or one of the members of Mustang's group, right? This chessboard. Most impressive. I thought it was so cool to get that, focus on Forman. And this episode actually does a lot of that, kind of focusing on a lot of the different players, be it Buccaneer, be it Forman, Miles. Oh my goodness, 2 episodes in, I feel like I just know Miles. Such a great character, really is. And, his heritage and his personality, and his position in all of this, right, being half Isholan as well, is such a fantastic recipe for a great character, isn't it? And then, of course, the 2 encounters with the infamous Kimberly, who I'm sure Miles knows all about. He does, actually, because he called him a serial killer as well, right? And, oh my goodness, even though I love Kimberly, it was great to see. And, before I go any further, I should specify, I love the character of Kimberly, right? I think that should be clear by now. I'm not trying to, give him a pass for his actions or anything, but it was so cool to see Miles lean in, much like how Father leans in on a much younger King Bradley, right, as he is being transformed into Wrath. And speaking of transformations and healing, guess who shows up here? The same doctor who's there, who's present. In fact, he seems to be a crucial component of creating Wrath. And of course, it's really quite clear that he hasn't aged much or at all, really looks exactly the same. So of course, there's something interesting going on there as well in terms of potential immortality, right? And you have Raven, who shows up again, and he's once again asking the question that was asked of Grumman, who declined. And then of course, he was sent to Eastern Command. Now the same question was asked of Olivier Armstrong, who really played him quite easily, right? Wrapped around her fingers. I mean, you can see that Raven is a little bit infatuated with her beauty, right? You see some of these close-ups. One of them that was really prominently featured is of her lips. I mean, those are incredible lips, of course. But you see, maybe Raven, from Raven's perspective, that's the thing that's kind of in his mind as well, right? And Raven really kind of plays right into her hands, doesn't he? She kind of uses his sexist assumptions about her against him, right? His misogynistic assumptions, perhaps. Though, maybe for the time period it's set in, I suppose that's kind of normal for someone of his age to be, speaking of. But yeah, she used it to her advantage, and she gets him immediately, right? Again, he does. You see that he crosses that line a bit as well. And she can read them. She can read them like a book. She knew exactly that she can lean into this and get them, right? He's talking about, oh, I'm sure, many of them, they would love to give you a child or something along those lines, right? And it is gross, right? For someone in his position to be implying or straight out, speaking of. And then, of course, he gets real close to her as well at the end there, right? And offers her, again, the same thing Rumen was offered. So it's a good spot. It's a good spot to end off the episode, for sure. And, a thing I really appreciate here is that even though there's a lot of revelations, a lot of big moments, endgame moments even, right? Starting to, kind of take its first steps into that, I appreciate that it didn't use any of those moments as some cliffhanger. Kind of just plays into the normal pacing of the episode, right? And then, of course, that's the ending. And also, before I move on from this, was there actually a bit of truth in there? It kind of felt like maybe there was, this whole idea that maybe she's past the age of having children. Maybe there is a bit of truth to it. It kind of did feel like maybe there is a slight bit of regret there. Maybe, given her position and her role in all of this as a leader, you could tell that she made a choice, a distinct choice here to, of course, not partake in that life, I suppose, right? Getting married, having children, even if she wanted to, right? Listen, just because she's this ruthless, ice cold individual, a fantastic leader as well, doesn't mean, she doesn't have dreams, or she didn't have these ideas of having her own family, perhaps. But again, you see that perhaps to be a great leader, one of the best leaders, essentially, and you can really gauge it by the men, the people that follow her. There's a really interesting comment here through one of the men that is a part of this army in the north under Olivier. He describes it as being this monolithic group, right? That's how tight they are, right? That they themselves are the wall behind the wall. So you really see that she is a leader through and through, and these, and her men are down to just do anything because of the respect they have for her. And you see the loyalty runs deep. And, as kind of expected, I mentioned in the last discussion that, them seeing, or their comrades seeing Ed and Al in action, trying to save and protect these men, you see, they appreciate that. You saved a lot of our comrades out there, right? You fought for them on their behalf and protected them. So that makes you our comrade, our friend, or our ally, right? Our brother, a part of this monolithic group of theirs. Tight. I mean, that feels like an understatement, doesn't it? Given how it's being described as this monolithic structure that is, fiercely based on loyalty, for sure. So yeah, I really appreciated that aspect of this. Listen, Ed and Al, and beyond Ed and Al, that side of this conflict, perhaps there's quite the ally now in the north. Olivier being the head of that. So to have them as an ally now, that's a big deal, I think, for the end game of this anime as well. Starting to have someone like Olivier Armstrong on their side, that's quite the asset. And, you see she's taken by surprise. She's bamboozled by this revelation, that she's been in the dark for so long. Many times she called, or at least once I think she called it my country, right? And then to find out about all of the things that are going on, behind the scenes, and, she's been in the dark this whole time, right? The origin of the country is essentially built on all of this, right? That this country, once it's ready, and apparently the North is the last stop, right? The last significant point of this, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of bloodshed soon enough. The battle in the North, or Battle of the North, I'm sure it's coming, because bloodshed specifically appears to be this crucial component of all of this, right? Lives being lost and bloodshed. In that part of it is something that's been upfront, or it's been kind of, sprinkled throughout the first 35 episodes, right? It became really clear that, the loss of life, the immense loss of life in Ishwal was something quite significant to this, grand plan. And of course, Lior, the uprising in Lior, all of that's been hinted at, right? But yeah, bloodshed. It seems to be this requisite, doesn't it? Now, in terms of the big revolution, especially for the characters of the show, of the anime, of the story, the massive transmutation circle. Again, like I mentioned in the last episode's discussion, it's been hinted at. It's been more than hinted at, right? If you look at Dr. Marco in Envy from a few episodes ago at this point. I'm not sure how long ago that was, but it was, episodes ago at this point. So right then and there, it felt like there's enough there to essentially understand or even confirm that, okay, there is meant to be this, transmutation circle that is going to actually utilize everyone. But then, of course, there's other things that are hinted at as well. Of course, there's actually an arc, a mini arc, all about a failed gate, gate of truth that Father tried to make, but, it failed. So even someone like Father was not able to accomplish this, right? And like I mentioned in that discussion around that time, in one of those episodes, perhaps he's trying to make a gate. Again, maybe he is trying once again through different means, through a much larger, plan. So yeah, and I say that because, once again, in quite a revealing scene, Envy straight up tells Marco that, no, you're close, but not quite, right? She kind of shuts down the idea of him trying to make a massive, or, Marco kind of assuming that it's for a massive Philosopher's Stone. But yeah, ultimately, I think that failed gate attempt certainly plays a big part here, or is a major component of this grand plan of his, giving it another go, right? But then, of course, you have to ask the question, how come Father wants to face the truth, right? And then you kind of go into that concept that I kind of, said seems a bit surface level, this idea of trying to, become a god, right? And this is around the time Ling and Ed and Envy are inside of Gluttony, inside the failed gate, and, Ed kind of brings it up. But then I also mentioned a few episodes after that, okay, clearly there's got to be motives, right? True reasoning behind all of this. And of course, there's this whole idea of this immortal army that's been brought up a few times. So that plays a part in this as well. And, Raven seems to be the one who offers this to a lot of the head honchos of certain locations. Sometimes they accept and sometimes they don't, right? People like Grumman, who kind of gets cast aside, though he's kind of back into action now, isn't he? Through Mustang. And, before I forget, I love how, Mustang's group being broken up and spread all across the country, actually, it's actually a bit of a masterstroke in terms of writing, isn't it? Because now, yes, it was quite the blow as well, but also now you have these familiar faces for Ed and Al, right? Anytime they do end up in a location that is new to them, but since all of them got split up all over the country, there's a good chance that they might run into a familiar face, someone who kind of knows them already, right? So I love that. I love that approach to this. And because of this, you are getting a focus on individuals such as Fullman just by himself. He was so impressive. I thought he was such an impressive asset and person to have in this episode. Yes, Ed really gets going. And like I mentioned, or I was trying to mention earlier, anytime he's got a hypothesis or hypotheses, make your pick or take your pick, something exciting is about to happen because, this is a clever dude, right? Intelligent young man. And, he does end up being perhaps the third to kind of figure it out and put it together. Maze Hughes, also before Maze Hughes, there was Isaac McDougall. Maybe that was one of the reasons he, starts to rebel initially. And then, of course, there's Dr. Marco as well. And also another really interesting scene here is Dr. Marco and Mei Chang discussing, the differences or the makeup or the possibility of their alchemies, right? You've got the alchemy of this country and then alkahestry of Jing, right? I believe she mentioned the dragon pulse, right? The chi of the land. But then as Dr. Marco explains that their alchemy, the alchemy of this country, is rooted in the movement of the Earth's crust, Mei Chang wasn't too sure, right? And they've alluded to this. They've shown this a few times. And of course, all of them from Jing kind of have a sense for this. But Mei Chang specifically has been shown a few times to really, really have quite the reaction to the things she's sensing. And in this one, she straight out kind of tells Dr. Marco and us, the audience, that it feels like a lot of just souls or people, right? And it makes sense. It all kind of goes back to that whole notion of, you know, human lives being the part or the ingredient, the major ingredient of the Philosopher's Stone, right? And then, you know, you take it beyond that. You know, remember that whole discussion about father being intrinsically linked to the alchemy of this country, right? That he might be the source of it all, as again, Envy kind of alluded to, and then father had to kind of, you know, tell them to shut up a bit. You know, you're talking a little too much here. So even though there's clearly this established understanding of their alchemy, right, and the roots of it all, it's not the case, is it, right? Because it's pretty clear at this point, the alchemy of this country is clearly attached to father, right? Again, the man just decided to turn it off at that one point. And again, Envy, you know, the big mouth starts running, and, you know, she starts having a go at Ed and Al about, oh, look, don't you feel so useless now, so helpless? You get a bit of power and you think you're all that, right? Even though you don't understand the origin of the power that you're kind of given here, or that you are able to use. So yeah, you know, it does a great job. The story does a great job of kind of drip feeding a lot of this that you can apply later on as you get more information, kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together. And as I am on the topic of father and his, you know, alchemy, you know, he heals Ed and Al, right? He heals Al's armor and, you know, fixes up Ed's, you know, broken forearm and some ribs. But yeah, this doctor comes in, heals up Kimberly. He's good as new, back in action. Of course, you know, another encounter with Miles, who can probably infer quite a bit from this. Okay, you know, he was certainly not in any condition to be out here like this and, you know, looking like this and behaving in this manner, right? Yet he is. He's right here in front of me. So Miles, yeah, he's going to play a part, isn't he? I'm sure he'll bring that up to them at some point. But yeah, I think that might do it for this one, folks. You know, I'm really quite excited for more Dr. Marco and Mei Chang scenes, and, you know, to learn more about alchemy. Because, you know, there you have something that isn't, you know, intrinsic to father, that isn't connected to the alchemy of father, like it is in this country, even though, you know, they have a different understanding of it. That's clearly been established for hundreds and hundreds of years, right? Back to the origins of this country. So, you know, this grand plan has been in motion for 400 years plus at this point, right? At least. Okay, so if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you are interested in early access or perhaps even full length, timer-based full length, consider checking out the Patreon page. You can get 3 episodes of early access at this point, soon to be 4. And links for that are in the description and the pinned comment. Also links to social media, if that's your thing. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for your time once again. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one.